Look, first of all, I think there's a lot at stake because, to me, public service broadcasting is critical. I don't want to see a world where Rupert Murdoch, Elon Musk and for-profit companies are the only people who can provide us with news or broadcasting. But what's happened here has seriously put the credibility of public service broadcasting at risk. So we have to protect public service broadcasting, and people are furious. The public, who can go to jail if they don't pay their TV licence, the vast majority of the workforce, who, as Adrian and others have said, are paid fractions of the figures we're talking for the top presenters, and who were forced to accept tough, very tough sacrifices, pay cuts, pay freezes, bogus self-employment. I heard some shocking stories about money not having remote controls in the TV room, about people using ironing boards at home for a desk when they were working from home because the money wasn't available for a desk. And then we have this, right? So it is pretty shocking stuff. So the first question I want to ask is, if I understand what you've said correctly, when it was decided that everybody was taking a 15% cut and all these cuts were imposed, there's only one person represented by Noel Kelly who says, or am I understanding this right, I'm not taking 15%. Is that, because I'm trying to understand how this exception, if that's what we're hearing, even came into play when everybody else was told you have to take 15%, and it apparently did. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I wasn't involved in the negotiations in the autumn period, but there certainly seems to be significant pushback, so yeah.
Okay, so one presenter or their agent wasn't willing to take the pain. And then, because, isn't it, I mean, you've described it as a failure of corporate governance, and it most certainly is that. But wouldn't any reasonable person looking on saying it's a bit more than that? Because this looks like, and I'm trying to be fair, but it really looks like orchestrated, organised deceit and concealment by somebody. I mean, that's what it looks like, because when everybody else is taking cuts, the people who orchestrated this and decided to call it consultancy in the books for, if I understand your point, because confidentiality was important, that's deliberate concealment. That is a plot, for want of a better word, to conceal this from the public, from the Oireachtas, and from the staff in RTE, because the people who concocted this would have known there would have been murder, and, if I understand it correctly, that it couldn't even have got past legal. That if I'm understanding this, if legal had known that this deal had been concocted, it would have said, no way. I mean, is that a correct characterisation of what we're dealing with?
Yeah, in terms of the payments and the invoices, I don't want to attribute motivation, but I think if you look at the events as outlined in the document, you can see that obviously now it was a lawful agreement that was entered into. What happened afterwards meant that the payments were not going to be declared in the way they should have been.
And you could draw no other inference from that than that was being done deliberately. Because if it hadn't been done deliberately, there would have been uproar, and indeed, legal would have challenged that.
Yeah, what should have happened when the sponsorship deal fell through is that any additional monies which were lawfully agreed between the Director General and NK Management should have been paid to and declared.
And just one, and this is kind of a bit more of a forensic detail, and I think you've answered, but I just want to get it absolutely clear in my head. Renault were never going to pay anything, were they? Even without the invoking of the guarantee, RTE were always going to pay. Isn't that correct? I mean, so I just want to understand that bit of it.
I guess as the person who's responsible for that relationship, the deal was constructed without any consultation with either me or the client. So I was advised that that this element had been included in the deal, and I went to speak to Renault. I think it's been said a couple of times about that they didn't renew it. I only ever spoke to Renault about year one, which was 2020. I never went back to them in 2021 or 2022. So the conversation with Renault was related to events in 2020, which because of COVID didn't happen until 2022. But Renault were not consulted when the deal was being put together for Ryan Tubridy. I went to Renault after the deal had been done.
Yeah, but what I mean is the public were always going to pay. There was never any question, because it had to be cost neutral. There was never any question that anybody other than the public were going to pay for this, for the secret payments to Ryan Tubridy, isn't that?
Well, the phrase cost neutral was said to me, Deputy, by the client who was coming to the end of year two of a 3-year contract. And he said to me, you know, I'd be more than happy to do events with the presenter, but it will have to be cost neutral to Renault. That's what he said.
Right. So in other words, our RTE, i.e. the public, were always going to pay. So that, I mean, that's whatever about who knew.
Well, the conversation
but some people who concocted this deal knew that the public were always going to pay, but they were going to conceal the fact. And I think, I mean, you know, there's been some questioning about, is it only the Director General and maybe the former CFO that knew? Okay, and people are saying, is that credible, that nobody here knew? And that's a very reasonable question. And your answer seems to be, well, we were following orders and we were in silos, right? And but we didn't really understand what was going on, which is not great. It doesn't reflect very well on the functioning of the executive. But if we accept what you've said, then we have to find out from the people who concocted this deal what their motivation was. The public are owed that. Because what we're being told here today is that the people here were not in on the concoction of this deal. So do you think the public have a right to know who concocted this deal and why they sought to conceal it?
So in terms, again, I can't attribute kind of intentionality or whatever to it, but I would say in terms of cost neutrality, that absolutely, the moment this was cost neutral, RT were paying Ryan Tubridy. Yeah. That's what I have seen, so, yeah.
And my time is short. Listen, last question, I just want to hear this. The talent. I don't like that expression, okay? The talent. Who are the talent in this use of the term? Because, you see, like one of the backdrops to this is there are people, crew members, camera people, people who make stages, admin people, journalists who are on a fraction of the wages of the top people, who are, if I understand the use of this term correctly, are somehow defined as not the talent. So there's the vast, vast majority of the 1,800 workers who benefited in no way, were deceived, who are not talent apparently, and then there's people who deserve to get 8, 9 and 10 times what they get. So, I mean, do you agree there's a problem with those sort of formulations of the talent, and even that there's a problem with these independent contractors full stop? That because, you know, you have staff people where they're paid, it's all transparent, and then you have these independent contractors who are supposedly the talent negotiating deals for multiples of what everybody else is earning. And is that level of inequality in the payment of people who work in reality for RTE, is it acceptable? Does it not have to end? And is it of itself not corrosive of the cohesion and the integrity of RTE.
Yeah, I completely agree with you around your point around talent, not talent. RTE is dependent on the 1,800 people who go in there every single day and do an incredibly good job because they really believe in public service media. And to your earlier point, in a way, in terms of that trust with the public, and to one of the deputy's points earlier, how we will be held to account by RTE as the executive board in terms of quality of journalism that will be applied anywhere else, which is so important. I think the word top talent is a terrible word anyway, so I would agree with you.
Well, thanks. And I would just say for the record, we think, and I think a lot of the staff think, that caps on this so-called top talent need to be introduced, because it's just not fair on the people.
Thank you.